Hey everyone, welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how to do 2D animation using the inverse kinematics 2D animation package that's part of Unity. It's a preview package, but it's officially been adopted by Unity and it's so good, and I've been using it religiously lately to animate not only my players and enemies, but also some sprites that I've made, some plants, some static things that I've painted that would otherwise be hard to animate because they don't move. So without further ado, here we go. I'm excited to show you how to do this. Okay, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have the right packages installed. So we're going to go to Window, Package Manager. So the packages are preview packages still. So you have to make sure that there's two drop downs here. You select all packages, and sometimes it doesn't show them all. You see how I selected it and then more showed up? Same with this. Go to Advanced and click Show Preview Packages and make sure it just knows it's selected, and then more stuff will show up like that. Okay, so the three packages you need are 2D Animation, 2D IK, and 2D PSD Importer. So make sure those three are added to your project. Okay. Now that that's done, I'm going to take my file. I've made a sprite sheet. It's a PNG file with a transparent background and a bunch of different sprites on it. And as I said, I'm going to do PSB later. Look in the description box below for the timestamp where I start doing the PSB version of this tutorial for different layers and stuff. Okay, I'll drag that in. Okay, so this is now here in my game, and because I have multiple sprites here, I'm going to change the sprite mode to multiple. If you have one sprite in your file, then leave it as single. Okay, apply. And I'm opening the sprite editor. And here we go. So first things first is we just got to select and segregate our sprites. You could do this automatically. I'm just going to do it manually. After you've selected all the sprites that you want to do this to, you, in the top left corner, go to Skinning Editor. Make sure your changes are applied. Great. So there's three major parts to building the structure of our image. There's bones, geometry, and weights. So the bones is like the underlying structure and how things will rotate and move. The geometry gets the more detailed structure of the non-bone parts of the image, and the weights determines what parts of the geometry is affected by which bones. So first thing you have to do is double click on the sprite you want to edit, and then it'll get this nice orange-red outline, and then you start. So click on Create Bones, and I'm going to just make a little spine in this plant. And my laptop is a bit laggy because I'm recording and doing this in Unity, so just don't mind that. So I'm just clicking where I think good placement would be for these. And you can adjust them later if you want. I think that's good. I don't need this last one. So right click when you're done and it'll stop the chain. And next we'll just go directly to Auto Geometry and click Generate for Selected. All right, that looks pretty good. So you can see some of the outlines didn't get fully geometricized, and you can edit the geometry. So if you want to add in points and edges and lines, you can create vertices, you can move them around in the edit mode. You can move the vertices so that you can make it more precise or less. I'm just going to leave it as is because generally the auto generate is pretty good. And then the last step, again, same deal, is the weights. So I'm going to go into auto weights. You can see how my whole plant has become a rainbow. So the color of the plant, it shows you the bones that influence that part of the plant. And you can already test it out now, how the plant moves by rotating the bones. So you can see that just by moving this top bone, it moves the top part of the plant. Every time you move it though, just Control-Z it back to its original position. So if you want to make it very clear cut, you can go into the weight slider and you select vertices, these blue dots, and it tells you which bones are influencing that spot, and you can add or remove or just completely uncheck a certain bone and make it totally influenced by one or the other. Another softer way of doing that is with the brush, where you basically can click on the bone that you want to like paint with, and then you kind of have like a brush and you draw along the vertices, and you'll see it makes it a little bit more yellow because I'm painting with the yellow bone. So that is another thing. Yeah, you can see when I control Z that it gets yellower. So anyway, so those are different ways you can change the weights, and that affects how it will move when you move the bones. So I'm happy with this, and so I shall click apply. And that's it. So this one is done. I'm going to exit out of my sprite editor, and let's see what happens. So I have my sprite here. If you don't see it, click on the little arrow, and there it is. And I'm going to drag it right into my game. I'm going to scale it up a bit, and I'm going to put it on a sorting layer so you can see it. And there it is. So you might be thinking, okay, my sprite's here and there's nothing going on. Where's all the bones I made? What you got to do is add a component, sprite skin. This step is only something you have to do for if you have multiple sprites in a sprite sheet that are separate and not coming together in the same object. So you add the sprite skin component, and then you just click on create bones, and then there it has all your bones, and you can see all of your bones are nested here in that object. Okay, cool. So if we select the bone and rotate it, it does the same thing. It turns that part of the sprite. If you drag the tip, it rotates, and if you drag the base, it moves. Okay. For some of you, this might be enough. You might want to go straight from this into animation and just work on rotating the bones and doing exactly what you want this way to animate your sprite. And that's great, and I do that often, especially for less complicated sprites. If you just need to rotate it a bit or shift it a little bit, it's easy and you can do that. Some of us want to make it so you only have to move one thing and the rest will follow, and that is where inverse kinematics comes in. Inverse kinematics is basically like a little algorithm that runs behind the scenes and knows how one thing moves and just can do some physics to move the rest of the things. This is why this exists, because people like me can't fully understand the calculations required to do such a thing on my own. So here is how we go. First thing I'm going to do is go to the origin of this object and add a new component. And this we're going to search for IK Manager 2D. Okay, great. So you have the manager, which holds all these different solvers, and the solvers are for different like strings or chains of movement. So for this one, it's one chain. We're just going to have one solver. So I'm going to click on the plus sign here, and we're going to do a CCD chain. Okay, so we've made it, and it's here also in the root of our object. It's called new CCD solver. It creates this object here. It's called new CCD solver 2D. I'm going to name it Planty Spine. Great. So you'll see it needs two things called an effector and a target. I'm going to go to the end of my chain, which in this case is bone 10, and create a game object here. I'm going to name it target. Have a voice crack because I'm a 12-year-old maturing boy, and I'm going to drag it to the tip of the chain where I want, you know, the tippiest tip of that bone. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate that object so it's in the exact same position and name that effector. Great. So we got the target and the effector, and they're both at the tippy tip. What we're going to do is take the target out and just put it in the root. I'm going to collapse this. Nope, just kidding. I'm going to reopen this. And then take the effector and the target, and we'll put them in Planty Spine here, the CCD solver that you just created. Maybe I should name it Planty Spine CCD solver so we know what it is. Okay, and so yeah, let's take the effector and drag it in. we'll take the target and drag it in. Now you'll see a little nobule come up for the chain length. It wasn't there before. You have to have the target and effector there before it shows up. So we could drag it, and as you drag it, you will see your chain light up green with the number of things that you've just, with the length that you've just put in there. So you can drag it, and it should be able to go all the way up to the full length of your chain, 11. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna have it go right now to 8. And then the funnest part is moving it. So the target is what you use to move your object around. The target is at the tip, and when you move it, you see how the whole object, oh, it's so satisfying, follows it. And you'll see, depending on the movement of it and where it goes, other things follow. And it's only up to the last one that I specified, 8. Okay, so the rest stay still. And there it goes. That's it. So if you want to get this whole thing animating, you can only move the target and have it do some really cool stuff. And that's also why we needed the target outside of the bones. Because if you put it in, it doesn't do anything. Okay, so my plant is a little messed up in terms of default pose because I moved the target into where I told you not to move it, and then moved it around, and then moved it back, so it lost that pose. So don't do that. If you do that, delete your solver, delete your effector, delete your target, go to the sprite sheet, like the baseline, okay? Click on Restore Default Pose, and it will go back. And then you can start again. There you have it. So that is chain, CCD, inverse kinematics, and you can do all your animation this way. Here's just a little example. I'm going to go to the base again of this sheet. I'm going to create an animation clip. Okay, cool plant. And simply, I'll click record. I'll go halfway through. I will grab my target. I'll move it over here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it at 1 second and see how it looks. Okay, that's pretty dumb. Like it's doing the disco. Maybe this should be a little bit here, okay? Sometimes you gotta kind of figure out the best flow for it. That's a bit better. It's simple. So I hope you enjoyed this part. So next up is the PSB file with multi-layered sprites. So this is really, really, really awesome because you don't have to import it and then put it back together. You can have it in its full pose and then just import it, and it stays like this, and you don't have to assemble. This way, because each sprite is on its own layer, it can tell them apart with this special PSD or PSB importer. So as you can see on the side here, I have all my sprites on different layers, okay? I have the forearms and the legs. You can create lots of different sprites, or you can make, you know, bigger sprites. You know, you could have your arm be one big sprite if you want. I did them separately. You can have your leg be one big sprite if you want. I did them separately. So here is my character. By the way, if you're a critter and you know Critical Role, you'll know that this is Caduceus Clay. I'm a big fan of Critical Role, and I'm making like a side project fan game about it. Let me know if you're also a critter. So you can see this is all separate, and I've saved it as a PSD, and I've also saved it as a PSB. And I think PSB is the one you want. Just so you know, if you go File, Save As, PSB sometimes doesn't show up. It's called Large Document Format. Okay, so that's the one you would want for PSB. So I'm going to do PSB. So I will do the PSB. Okay, so I dragged it in, and immediately it's already recognized all the different layers as different body parts. So I'm going to go directly into the sprite editor. You'll see it made its own little sprite sheet, which is pretty cool. we don't need that. So I'm just going to go directly to the skinning editor, and you'll see our person is still in their beautiful position as was in Photoshop. So here we do the same thing. Basically, we create bones. So I'm going to do that. The first thing I always forget is to double click the sprite you're working on. So I have here just the torso is now bone. So I'm just going to do the geometry for the torso first. So I have it selected, and I'll click generate for selected. And now we can see that it's all clean. So I'll click on create bone, and I'll make it for this, and I will pick my root, which is going to be the neck here, make this bone. Okay, and then from there I will make forearm. And what I'll do now is just generate geometry for the arm. So I'll do the upper arm first, generate for selected. I do want it to be slightly influenced by this bone here, and then I will do this sprite as well, generate for selected, and I'll do it for the rest. So what happens if I move the head? It's pretty good, just the head moves. And then if I move the arm, yep, it bends all right. You see none of the body moves, so it's not like this bone is influencing other parts of the body. If I move this arm, that's good. You see the torso doesn't stretch, it's just the arm moving. That's really good. If I rotate the torso a little bit, I mean, it's not natural, but it moves the way we want it to. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to click apply. All right, so let's go back into our game. And so for the PSB, you want to drag the whole object right in, okay? So for the PNG file, we pulled in just a single sprite, but for this, we'll pull in the whole object, and there he is. So you'll see the bones are already there. That's another thing, is we don't have to make a skinning editor and create bones. It's already there, and that's part of the PSD Importer. That part of the perks, okay? So you'll see all the sprites are here. These are all the sprites. The bones are separate, but they are attached to the sprites. So it can be kind of confusing. You can grab the arm and you can move it, and it does nothing. And you can grab the bone of the arm and move it, and it moves the arm, okay? I recommend renaming these to the body parts they're on. Now I'm going to show you how to do the inverse kinematics for the limbs. So that's just two bones, and theoretically we can also do a spine inverse kinematic system for his spine, but I'm not going to do that right now, just showing you the limb. So it's basically almost the exact same as the spine. You'll see. So I'm going to take the left arm. I'm going to do what I did before with my target in reverse order, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to move it to the tippy top point of the bone, duplicate it, name it effector. Okay, we're going to go to the base, and we're going to add component IK Manager 2D. We're going to make another solver, but this time it's going to be limb. I'll name it left arm solver. Okay. Since this is a multifaceted object, person, enemy, whatever it is, it's going to have multiple solvers. Okay, it's going to have one solver for the left arm, one solver for the right arm, one for the leg, and the other for the other leg and the spine. There's potential for a lot of solvers instead of the plant that we made, which is just one. So what, just for good practice, it's good to just make an object called solvers. And as you create them, you can just sort of keep them all in there to keep things tidy. For the left arm solver, I'm going to take the target out again, and then we're going to put the effector and the target in the solver as we normally do. And you'll see immediately when I put the effector in, it turned yellow, and when I put the target in, it turned green, and the arm bent backwards. So you'll see it took effect right away, and and it's just the two bones, as I mentioned before, and it's bending in the opposite direction that we want it to, but we can fix that. But look, if I move the target, it's doing the same thing. It's bending the arm, and you'll see it's only bending it in one direction, which is the opposite direction, but that's fine because there is a cool thing in the left arm solver or the limb solver. You can click on flip, and that flips the direction it bends in so that you can get it bending in the right old direction. Yeehaw! So that's basically how you can do limbs that bend like normal limbs. And again, there's the restore default pose there, so you can always bring it back to where it started. Okay, so that's it for my tutorial. I hope it was helpful. I hope it showed you the multiple different ways that you can use this to animate and move your characters and plants and objects and things that are in your game. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you know any answers to questions, answer them in the comments below. If you have any further advice or resources, put them in the comments below. If you like this tutorial and you want me to do more tutorial style videos, give this a thumbs up, and then I know that you like it and that I can keep making more to help all the other game developers out there. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys soon. Okay, bye.